everyone, and welcome back to my channel True Crime and Trials, where I discuss true crime and trials. And today is day 7 of the Derek Chauvin trial. More use of force testimony. I actually said at the end of my last video that I thought the witness from yesterday was coming back today. She wasn't, so I apologise. I was tired last night because this trial doesn't finish till about 11 o'clock at night, my time. So more about training and more of Mr. Nelson inferring the crowd was an angry mob and that what police officers have to do sometimes looks harsh. It does, like when they were loading him to try and get him into the ambulance. Now that's been explained. You understand why they had to do it, even though it looked harsh. More testimony stating that officers are trained to use neck restraints with their legs and putting the knee on the neck of someone that is cuffed. Basically, the witness says that's not authorised. So, you know, they are authorised to do restraints, but not with the knee on the neck. So the exhibit Nelson shows is showing how to cuff someone on their stomach, and he tries to infer that the knee is on the neck when you can quite clearly see it isn't. Nice try though. The shin is actually where he's trying to infer that the knee is, and you know the person that's on the witness that's on the stand is saying no, that's not the knee, that's the shin. And he says that officers are always told to be mindful about the neck and the position of the legs and everything. He asks if the paramedic would have been able to check the pulse in George Floyd's neck if Derek Chauvin's knee had been in the way, and he agrees he wouldn't have been able to. So the next witness says that it's possible he has had to hold someone down with his body weight for up to 10 minutes. He can't recall when or why, but he says it's possible that could have happened. And, you know, holding someone down until EMS arrives, so as long as needed. And clearly in this incident it wasn't the case. He'd passed out. Nelson also keeps saying that someone who comes from being unconscious can be just as aggressive, if not more, when they regain consciousness. They say the witnesses keep saying it's possible, but I think George had gone past the point of being brought back. And, you know, they keep showing different angles of Derek, and if I'm honest, it does look as though Derek's knee isn't actually on George's neck. You get the front angle and it looks quite clearly that he is pressed down on his neck, but when you go around the back it looks like it's more on, you know, in between the shoulder blades. So, you know, it kind of conflicts your mind a bit, because you see it and you think, yeah, definitely on the neck, and then you look round and you're like, oh god. So Nelson asked this witness if the crowd was saying, I'd slap the fuck out of you and you're a pussy, that would be enough to raise an alarm for the officers. And he agrees, you know, trying to infer again that the crowd were getting more and more aggressive. They posed harm to the officers that were there. But then Mr. Slisher gets up and says, well, what if they were saying, get off him, you're killing him? And the witness agrees that this should also be taken into account. So, you know, there's a bit of a balance there. As much as the crowd were shouting abuse at the officers for what they were doing, they were also shouting things, telling the officers that he's not moving, get off him, you're killing him. So now we move on to CPR training, which is also given to officers, and they show that Derek Chauvin did attend this. And then they move on to obviously fentanyl use and the effects of it, and how it's on the rise in that area. And consistently throughout the day, Nelson is trying to put a lot of blame on the crowd and why the officers acted like they did. Did they pose a threat? Were they that big of a distraction? Were they behaving in a way to cause the officers major concern? Would they have interfered with EMT treatment? I think when EMT got there and they were trying to help George, I don't think any of the bystanders would have caused any problems. I think they would have still been angry at the officers, but I think they would just left the EMT to do what they needed to do. I can't see it. I totally get that, they were shouting abuse and everything, but Officer Tao was handling them, and they kept stepping forward, but they weren't hitting anyone. They weren't, they were just shouting words. So there's a sergeant from the LAPD, again, about use of force. Quite an interesting testimony, to be honest. And he is basically saying that... So, sorry about that, it paused again. So as I was saying, the sergeant from the LAPD, expert in use of force, it was an interesting... I know we've had full days of use of force testimonies, and it has been rumoured that juries are getting bored of it. I mean, it says in a tweet that jurors seem to be losing some concentration. Only one appears to be taking notes. Others are looking around, a couple are yawning. There is even a rumour that one actually fell asleep. This testimony is abruptly ended. So nobody knows what's going on. People are scared that something's just going to go wrong and there's not going to be justice. I don't know. This testimony was good. It was, it wasn't as repetitive as the others. And he does say George Floyd was actively resisting arrest. I didn't want to see that. I saw that he was scared, but yes, in an officer's eyes, he was resisting when they were trying to get him into the car. And he points out that when George Floyd was, in some of the video, you can see him sat on the back seat, but with his legs out. And he points out that one of the officers did have a good rapport with him, and he could have kept going with that rapport and tried to de-escalate it and maybe eventually talk him into getting into that back of that car. But then, things escalate. He ends up being pulled to the other side of the car, and at one point he was on his knees at the other side. So from that point, he thinks it didn't need to go any further, basically. But then he was put in the prone position. He does kick out, which is another resisting arrest. But as soon as he stopped resisting in that prone position, he should have been moved, as we've heard before. I like this witness. He's actually giving his own opinion and not going through the manuals and the training and what should and shouldn't be done. He's actually commenting on what he's seen and what he's reviewed. So this was a bit more interesting, but I think by this point the jury might have had enough. I mean, it's just been days upon days of the same thing, so I can understand them losing concentration. Is the judge worried? Possibly. Are the lawyers worried? Possibly. Who knows? So yeah, like I say, Nelson is still going with the angry mob crowd and the drug use, and yes, the drug use has effects. Was it enough to cause those effects? I'm sure we'll find out. Was the angry mob going to cause problems? Was it enough to make the officers worried that they could potentially cause problems? From my point of view, I don't think it was, but I'm seeing it from an emotional point of view and not from an officer's point of view, so I don't know. But we will see what tomorrow brings, or today as I'm filming this. Lots of things going on, lots of things too. Oh, and Maurice Hall, he's going to be decided on by the end of this week. He's worried that if he takes the stand, he will say enough to end up with a third-degree murder charge himself, thus invoking his Fifth Amendment right. So the judge has ordered the lawyers to come up with the questions that they want to ask him. He will review it, and if there's, a chance that he could, talk himself into a third-degree murder charge himself, then there we go. So we'll find out in a couple of days with that. So I will be back with day 8 later. So until then, bye for now.